When you hear and think of October 31st, what comes to your mind? Halloween, costumes, trick or treats, and haunted houses, right? But did you know that on this same date, different years, several incidents occurred? From a monk kicking off a religious revolution that changed the world, to the NBA breaking a racial barrier, and to zombies taking over TV? So let's dive into 5 stories through the time that all occurred on the 31st of October. This all happened on one single date, so let's travel back in time through 5 stories that prove that October 31st is more than just ghosts and pumpkins. It holds more history than we thought possible. Number 5. It all began more than 500 years ago. A man named Martin Luther would change everything. In Wittenberg, Germany in 1517, Martin Luther walked up to the wooden doors of the castle church and nailed a 95 Theses list to the doors. It was a sign of protest. Protest against the practices of the Catholic Church. At the time, the Catholic Church sold pieces of paper claiming to reduce time in purgatory. These documents were sold by priests, promising forgiveness of sins. The richer you were, the more grace you could buy. Luther believed this was unbiblical, corrupt, and against the practice of Christianity, and his theses called for a reform of the Church. But what he did not know was that this singular act of his would spark a movement in Europe. At first, Luther wasn't seeking rebellion, he wanted communication, but within weeks, Luther's copies of his document spread across the continent thanks to the press at the time. Soon, Luther, popes, scholars, and the masses were forced to take sides, and Europe would find itself in a division. Between the Catholics and the Protestants, a split that reformed politics, education, and faith. When you think about it, Halloween celebrates masks and costumes. Back in 1517, this same date, the spirit of October 31st was rebellion against religious authority itself. Jumping to the number 4, and let's go back to 1632, a little more than a century, to the Dutch city of Delft. On the 31st of October, Johannes Vermeer was born, the man who would one day paint The Girl with a Pearl Earring. Unlike Martin Luther's time of chaos and revolution, this was the Dutch's golden age. This was a time when merchants were exploring seas, scientists were making new discoveries and challenging old ideas, and artists were in excess, capturing the beauty of the world. It was in this era that Johannes Vermeer was born, a name that would be revered and applauded, just not in his lifetime. Vermeer's world was filled with stillness. In his paintings, women sat over a table reading letters, sunlight spilling in. Vermeer's paintings all carried the same feel. And he was not a fast worker, as sometimes he produced only 2 or 3 paintings per year. Why? Vermeer was obsessed with light and precision. Some historians believe he may have used early optical devices to study how light reflected because his paintings looked so real and delicate, like they were alive. Yet, despite this talent of his, Vermeer's paintings never achieved the success he had hoped for. He died in debt at just 43, leaving behind his wife and 2 children to struggle. For nearly 2 centuries, his name stayed unknown and his works forgotten. Until the 19th century. In the 19th century, art critics rediscovered his paintings, and the whole world finally saw what they had initially missed. Today, 31st October is a day of masks and celebration, but it was also the day an artist was born, one whose artistry lived beyond him. 300 years after Vermeer, on the same October 31st, but in 1950, another history was made. Number 3. In Rochester, New York, basketball fans filled the arena waiting for a game between the Washington Capitals and the Rochester Royals. When Earl Lloyd stepped onto the court wearing the Syracuse Nationals jersey, He became the first African-American player in NBA history. It was just 4 years after Jackie Robinson had broken baseball's color barrier, and racism was still prevalent in American sports. Earl wasn't the first black to be signed to the NBA, but he was the first to play in an official game. When he stepped up that night, Lloyd faced jeers, threats, exclusion from hotels, and the knowledge that one wrong move and he would be judged more harshly. And it was all over, but he refused to back down. He scored 6 points, grabbed 10 rebounds, and walked off the court with his head up high. It was the beginning of a change that today, and the future, would always benefit from. Lloyd went on to win a championship in 1955, and later became a coach and scout, paving the way years after for other black athletes like Bill Russell, Michael Jordan, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to come. Today, every dunk, every MVP trophy, every sold-out arena owes something to Earl Lloyd, and the first courageous step he took on October 31st, 1950. It may be a Halloween celebration today, but in 1950, it was a pivotal day for black people and American sports at large. Number 2. Let's go to 2008, when the world was reeling from the global financial crisis, with banks collapsing, governments bailing them out, and the trust in traditional money was crumbling by the day. Then, on October 31st, an unknown person or group under the alias Satoshi Nakamoto published a 9-page document titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It proposed a radical idea, which was money that exists online, controlled by no central authority or government, a system where people could send money directly to each other, recorded on a public digital ledger called the blockchain. At the time it came out, almost no one paid attention to it. The white paper was only shared on a small cryptography mailing list, but within a few years, Bitcoin became a global phenomenon, sparking a change in digital finance and leading to the creation of other cryptocurrencies and changing how people saw money, freedom, and finances. Whether you think of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as a financial risk or a genius innovation, the financial present as we know it started on October 31st, 2008. And finally, the number 1. We arrive at October 31st, 2010. As trick-or-treaters filled the streets that night, millions were tuned in to the premiere of the new AMC series called The Walking Dead. None of the watchers at the time knew it, but they were watching the start of a redefined television horror, the start of a cultural phenomenon. The show wasn't the first to imagine a world ran by zombies. That idea had been around for decades. But The Walking Dead did something different. The show brought zombies to mainstream television and turned them into a global obsession. The first episode opened with Sheriff Rick Grimes waking up in an abandoned hospital only to find the world destroyed. That scene immediately hooked viewers, as it was unsettling and terrifying all at once. Beyond the horror of the show, what really made it stand out was how its focus was on the people, not the zombies. How they rebuilt, protected each other, and sometimes turned against each other. The show, although about zombies, was more than that. It was about survival, choices, and how far humans can go to protect themselves and when pushed to the edge. Over its 11 seasons, The Walking Dead built a massive fan base, inspired spin-offs, and left a huge mark on pop culture. Even if you've never seen it, chances are you've heard of it or seen someone dressed as a zombie because of the show. So October 31st isn't just about costumes and candies, it's also the day one of the biggest shows came to life, literally. So when you think of October 31st, it's easy to think of spooky decos, candies, and costumes, but this date carries more weight. It's the day Martin Luther challenged one of the powerful institutions and changed religion globally. It's the day Johannes Vermeer, one of the greatest painters, was born. It's the day Earl Lloyd stepped into the arena and broke barriers in the NBA and opened the door for generations and more to come. It's when Bitcoin launched and changed how we think and see money. And it's also the day a TV show like The Walking Dead became a global obsession. So whether you're out celebrating Halloween or just scrolling through the day's trends, remember every date on the calendar has a history. If you'd like to discover what has happened on other dates like the day you were born or other dates you care about, hit the subscribe button and happy Halloween!